This is Rudy Giuliani, and this is America's Mayor Live. And if it looks a little strange in the background, it is a little strange in the background. That's England behind me. Well, that's not England behind me. I mean, it is England behind me. It's just a painting in England. I'm at a hotel, a very, very fine hotel, within a few blocks of the Parliament, within a few blocks of Buckingham Palace. And I escaped today. Thank God, with my life, although with a very upset stomach, from Paris, where, among other things, the food now stinks. At least the food on Air France. Please do never get a meal on Air France. Take it with you, even if you're in business class or first class or whatever class you're in. They gave me some kind of chicken thing and had me sick for a day and a half. The first day and a half I was here, and I had to give a speech. Being a, I don't know, a tough guy, I gave the speech anyway, but I was sick as a dog. Man, the service was terrible, and the people here people in Paris are terrible. They're just nasty to everybody. And then, of course, they went ahead and kind of decided that the Olympics is going to destroy Western civilization. Did it ever occur to these people who run the Olympics? And I wonder who the hell they are, and I wonder how honest the Olympics is. But that's been a long thing. The Olympics Committee. Reminds me of the World Economic Forum. You know, you will all come to my World Economics Forum, and I will become a millionaire by telling you all the stupid communist things that I learned, and then all of the things I learned from Germany when I was there. We organized like Germany. Klaus Schwab. I mean, what does the World Economic Forum ever did but give us the European Union, right? The European Union. So now they do a rendition of a combination of the Last Supper and a bacchanal feast with Dionysius. And they're trying to say it really was just a bacchanal feast with Dionysius. Those people in the background were made to look like Jesus, the apostles, and they advertised it here in Paris as mocking. They did, the people who put it on, as showing our independence from religion. I mean, France was always a country dominated by the Roman Catholic Church. My God, that wasn't true. That's not true. They were killing Catholic priests during the French Revolution. It hasn't been dominated by Catholicism in any kind of bad way. I don't know if it ever was. I mean, Italy had more of that problem than France. But in any event, this is if you can't figure out these people are diehard communists, you are uneducated and illiterate. Because I can read to you right out of Karl Marx. You got to take out religion. You got to destroy a culture. This is beyond just taking out a religion. With their anti-Semitism, their hatred of Jews, their hatred of Christians, that's Western civilization. The Bible, Jesus, Judeo-Christian religion, okay, that's a religion, but it's the basis of Western civilization. You know, the first music, the great music of Western civilization, some of the greatest music ever written. I don't know who has better music than we have in Westerns. You're going to beat Mozart and Bach and Beethoven and Verdi and just go on and on. Shostakovich. I mean, just go on and on. No, you're not. You're not. You're not going to beat our literature either. Who has a literature like us? Yeah, most other people don't write. But half the world doesn't write. Western civilization, people write and they read and they think and they develop grand ideas, and the Chinese had to copy it all from us. The Chinese are smart. I don't take smartness away, but they don't have a lick of creativity. Communism doesn't teach you to be creative. Western civilization does. From the beginning, from the Greeks. And if you wanted to honor Greece, don't honor some kind of a drunken satanic feast, which is what a bacchanal festival was, to start the Olympics. Honor Socrates, who gave his life for truth. Honor Plato. Honor Aristotle, who became the basis for Thomas Aquinas and a lot of Orthodox Catholicism, which is philosophy, otherwise known as theology. Or how about we do something about the Ten Commandments? How about we do something about the rock of Western civilization? Thou shalt not kill. Maybe some people in America should hear that. With the killing that's going on. Thou shalt not steal, Mr. President? Ha! I can almost tell you to the penny how much you stole. The other guy who could tell you how much you stole is your friend Zelensky. He knows even better than me. So they attack Jesus Christ. Now, there had to be the greatest man ever lived. To me, he's the Son of God. To me, what the Last Supper represents is not Judas's betrayal. Do you know that a number of the articles in the Western press, including Ivy League educated morons, said that the Last Supper represented Judas's betrayal? Jeez, you got to at least read the Bible as history. The Last Supper represents the establishment by Jesus of the Eucharist, of his leaving for his followers his body and blood. Now, Christians have somewhat different view of the reality of that, exactly what it is, how real is it, how sacramental is it, but all agree that it is an enormously important reenactment of him leaving himself with us and being part of our life every day. You want to take that away from us? Of course you do, because you're a communist. You're atheistic Marxist. You hate religion. You hate morality. That's why we have the Bacchanal Festival and the desecration of the Last Supper. And the Olympics did that. So I wanted to get the hell out of there as fast as I could, because it represents to me what I've thought of France for the last 20 years when I had to go there for business. This is to me, when you come to Europe, you're looking at the past. When you go to Asia, you're looking at the future. So we should take our past, the good things we learned from Europe, and apply it to the relationships we develop in Europe, in Asia, and in Africa. And then our friends in Europe who want to join us, like the people here, I bet, when they get over this left-wing thing they're going through, which I listened to the debate in the Treasury, in the Parliament today, between the new they call it the Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's the Secretary of the Treasury. She got up and she did a major attack on the Tories and how they put England, UK into debt. But then the shadow Minister of the Exchequer, a very articulate Tory conservative, got up and said, "Hey, we didn't do this alone. Many of these things are things that you pushed, and you knew all of this before you did. Don't act like you used to come for briefings every week." So it was I honestly don't know, like I know in America, who's telling the truth and who isn't completely, but it was a heck of a good exchange. I mean, we would be proud if we had a debate like that in America. And I'm just a few blocks away, so maybe I can get a chance tomorrow if I get back early enough to see a little of it, and I'll tell you about it. But I can tell you, I don't know, kind of write France off. You know, when even in NATO during the Iraq War and other places, their soldiers they give us don't fight. They stay and watch. Our boys and girls go fight. The UK does. Scotland does. Canada and Australia do. But a lot of these countries, not only weren't they paying their money to NATO, they make believe they provide troops on a stipulation that they don't have to get involved in the fighting. Now, you know, our presidents put up with that. But a real president like Trump doesn't put up with that. And he's absolutely right. You don't want to pay what you owe, or not even pay what you owe, but put into defense what you should put into defense, so you can contribute to protecting all of us. And you don't. And the dirty little secret is, and you give us troops that end up being medics. Screw you. We got a lot better. We got a lot bigger world here to deal with, and a lot more threats than that come from your part of the world. So I think a change there is going to really mean something. I read somewhere in these left-wing garbage papers they have here, Figaro and the Times of London, the Guardian. Jesus. Yeah. Next time you run out of toilet paper. Oh, well. The Guardian, they're all doing this. Harris is going to really could be terrific on foreign policy. I mean, they buy any crap, don't they? Jeez, I mean, I think I'm going to go over to the Guardian and see if I can sell like a portion of the Brooklyn Bridge. What a bunch of jackasses. You know, this woman, when she was vice president, was it Lester Holt that she told him, well, she didn't know. First she said she went to the border. Then she contradicted herself and said she never went to the border. So internally lying, whatever, like Biden used to do. And then she said, and I've never been to Europe. I don't know. She was in her mid-40s at that time. She was the AG of Florida, of the left coast. She was the woman who helped destroy San Francisco. You want to see what you do as president? Go take a visit to San Francisco, and just don't get high from the smells in the air, which could also give you the plague. But she said she'd never been to Europe. And nobody stops and says, how the hell you can be vice president if you've never been to Europe? I mean, the most important aspect of being president is foreign policy. We have 50 legislatures, 50 governors. We got the Congress, right? We got the Supreme Court, domestic policy. The president shares in that, but there are very few areas of foreign policy that is his alone, of domestic policy that's his alone. Well, the military and foreign policy isn't his alone, but it's largely his. And she's never been to Europe? What the hell good is she? And what kind of judgments is she going to make about foreign policy? You have to go to these places to make judgment. That's why I can make judgments about them. Since I've been mayor, I've taken 150 trips. I've been in this country 20 times, met with prime ministers and government ministers, press, did a big interview today with a guy who ran for mayor. I'd be prepared to make decisions about foreign policy. She's not. She probably knows less about foreign policy than you do. Listen to me. What a joke. What a complete joke this is. And this, you should see the European newspapers. It's like she's some kind of queen. But then they don't know what to say about her. Like, what does she accomplish? She never passed a bill in Congress. She had one massive responsibility as vice president and failed at it. God, historically failed at it. She's a historic failure. Here's what I want to leave you with, because I'm going to turn it over to Ted, because believe it or not, it's 12, whatever the heck it is. 1:15, excuse me, doctor. But tomorrow I have to get up early because I'm going to Stonehenge. Oh, yes. A great, great pillar of Western civilization. Run by the Druids, not to be confused with the Druze who Hamas slaughtered. I mean, Hezbollah slaughtered. Now, I think this is right, Ted, but I want you to follow up on this. Harris was very, very vicious and nasty to Bibi Netanyahu when he was here. This was within a day of the children there being slaughtered in Israel. And she gave a statement. Do you have that statement ready? to play? I don't know if you do. But the statement basically says that Israel has a right to defend itself. But, and then she goes on for 15 minutes about all the terrible things that have happened to Hamas and how awful Israel is and how terrible they are, creating not just a moral equivalency between Hamas, Palestine, which are made up of terrorists and crooks, and Israel, which is made up of our best friends and a stable democracy. She makes the Palestinians and the people from Hamas superior. And then he goes to see Trump, and Trump greets him, and then he's got to rush back there because her heroes, the Hezbollah people and the Iranian people that directed, started killing children. Now, please note this because this is not explained clearly enough. They deliberately killed those children. The Israelis didn't put them in the line of fire like they do. She never points that out because she's a traitor. She never points out, and she may not know because she never went to Europe, except maybe as vice president, where you sip a little wine like they do in San Francisco. They drink wine all the time, which is why I guess they can take the smells. But I think you're looking at the children she ignored. I mean, she made her own statement about how terrible it was for the people of Hamas. But these children who died, I haven't seen her make a statement about them. She put out a statement read by a guy named Gordon, who I've never heard of. This is getting like Biden, who couldn't figure out who Laken Riley was, so he called her Lincoln Riley. These are bad people. Please don't get fooled again. Plus, I mean, she was just telling you the day before he left how healthy he was. That's part of one of the biggest cover-ups in American history. The cover-up of a mentally ill president for at least 4 years, with people dead as a result of that, because we're going to show you how he got people killed. You know that. We were just going to prove it to you. So I'm going to take a break now, and I'm going to pack up my stuff. And next time I talk to you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Stonehenge. I'm not even going to tell you anything else about it, except to ask you to go and look it up, because I want you guys to read, all of you, because you got to develop critical thinking to get beyond these monsters who are running us now and trying to suppress our freedom of speech, destroy our religion, put us in jail. You got to think for yourself. So you go figure out what Stonehenge is, and we'll talk about that too. And keep watching this slippery thing. She's going to do one of her word salads soon. You'll see. It's not a completely integrated mind. There's something wrong with it. You don't say the crazy things she says without something being wrong with it. And what she did with Hamas and Palestine and the Jewish people is unforgivable. But she did the other day to Bibi Netanyahu when he came here. And what she did in creating this moral superiority for the Palestinians is unforgivable. And the fact that all she said now is, oh, this shouldn't have happened, never expressed any word of anything. And by the way, when she was talking about how the Jewish people have to defend themselves, that's it. She never mentioned the fact that there were American hostages. You know why? Because she couldn't give a damn. California wine is more important than those hostages. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless America. Ted, we're going to take a break and you take over. Okay. Good night from London. Let's see what happens.
What do you mean?
And if I put my name on something, I truly believe in it. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to something I'm incredibly proud of. My own brand of organic specialty coffee, Rudy Coffee. Believe me when I say it's the best coffee you'll ever try. It's smooth, rich, chocolatey, and gentle on your stomach. It's so good, I even recommend drinking it black. It comes in 3 varieties, including what I promise is the best decaf you'll ever have. You can order now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting rudy.coffee. By supporting Rudy Coffee, you're not just treating yourself to exceptional coffee, you're also supporting our cause, the cause of truth, justice, and American democracy. You'll also be supporting the Call to Action nonprofit, which is devoted to helping veterans and first responders, so you can make a difference and taste the difference by ordering today at rudy.coffee. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's Coffee.
Welcome back to America's Mayor Live. I'm Ted Goodman, coming to you live from New York City. Of course, the mayor is across the pond with Dr. Maria, and we'll continue to have a live coverage and hear from the mayor in London and elsewhere as he continues his travel. So, of course, the Sweepstakes now, we've been so used to for a long time tracking the Sweepstakes on the Republican side. And of course, now it is the Democrat Party who is in search of a running mate for their presumptive nominee. It does appear that it will be Kamala Harris, the current vice president. And so she has. So, of course, we see all these leaks in the paper. And as many of you know, these leaks don't just happen by accident. Doesn't make them all true, but they all definitely come from somewhere. So we're hearing we're hearing a few names repeated over and over again, right? We've heard probably 10 to 12 names at least pop up, but we're hearing the same 3 to 4 names repeatedly being mentioned. Of course, that's Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. He's getting a lot of mentions as a potential running mate for Kamala Harris. Of course, you have Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. His name keeps coming up. And a new one that we're hearing now is Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, a Democrat, part of the unique situation in Minnesota where they have the Democrat Party is kind of uniquely built in Minnesota, and I want to get the name right. I believe it's Democrat Farmers Party. Let's get this right. The DFL, the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. It was formed as a merger between the Minnesota Democrat Party and the Minnesota Farmer Labor Party back in the 40s. And of course, it's just one of 2 state parties that align with the National Democrat Party but have different names. And the trivia question tonight is, what other state party aligned with the Democrats has a different name than Democrat Party? So that'll be a nice question. You can't Google it, though. So excuse me, folks. We are checking with people as we do tonight's show. Of course, Mayor Giuliani, you heard from him earlier. He is coming to us live from London, England this evening, and had a lot of interesting things to say about what's happening in the world. And now we're going to turn our focus to The domestic Democrat Party search for a running mate for Kamala Harris. Again, we're hearing the names Josh Shapiro, Tim Walz, Mark Kelly, and you're seeing this name a lot on the TV. That's Pete Buttigieg, the current U.S. Department of Transportation head. So let's kind of look at these folks one by one. Let's start with Josh Shapiro. I believe is the odds-on favorite, of course, being the governor of Pennsylvania. That is going to be a key state this election cycle, the Keystone State. Josh Shapiro, a very popular Democrat governor, received a few 100,000 crossover votes. Now, these are people who supported President Trump, but also supported Josh Shapiro. So here is someone that Kamala Harris must be looking at and seeing as someone who can strategically help with a state that really she will need to have in November if she is to take the White House. So here's Josh Shapiro earlier today campaigning for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania.
This is the community where I was raised, and the community that my amazing wife, Lori, Pennsylvania's First Lady, sitting right over there. Where she and I have chosen to raise our 4 children. And we feel blessed to be here. This is the community that showed me the way, that taught me about 3 simple letters in the alphabet that I reflect on every day. Governor Whitmer talked about it earlier, GSD. We focus on getting shit done here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was those lessons that showed me the importance of a quality public education, and as your governor, we've invested more in public education than at any other time in our Commonwealth's history. Great schools for our kids, safe communities, because we've learned you can invest in police and you can make meaningful criminal justice reform. We've done both here in the Commonwealth. When I was on your porches and at your doors, you talked to me about making sure we could breathe clean air and drink pure water. It's right there in Article 1, Section 27 of our state constitution, and we are delivering that here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You taught me the valuable lessons that everyone here in the Commonwealth, no matter what they look like, where they come from, who they love, or who they pray to, should have the freedom to chart their own course.
So those were some words from Democrat Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. I wanted to kind of give you a little bit on the governor, some of his words and his style to kind of give you an idea of what the Harris team is looking at. And kind of, this is kind of what they're going to get should they choose Josh. Now, here's Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. This is a name you're going to hear more and more of here. And it could be a decoy, or, it could be it's kind of to throw us off, or this could be very real. So here's Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota of the Democrat Farmers Labor Party.
When you were in the House, but you've legalized recreational marijuana, you passed universal background checks on guns, you expanded LGBTQ protections, you implemented tuition-free college for low-income Minnesotans. There's free breakfast and lunch for school kids. Do you think your record is an asset to the ticket, or would it risk fueling Trump's attacks as you being a big government liberal?
What a monster. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn, and women are making their own healthcare decisions. And we're a top 5 business state, and we also rank in the top 3 of happiness. Look, they're going to label whatever they're going to label. He's going to roll it out, mispronounce names, to try and make the case. The fact of the matter is, where you see the policies that Vice President Harris was a part of making, Democratic governors across the country executed those policies, and quality of life is higher, the economies are better, all of those things. Educational attainment is better. So yeah, my kids are going to eat here, and you're going to have a chance to go to college, and you're going to have an opportunity to live where we're working on reducing carbon emissions. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have personal incomes that are higher, and you're going to have health insurance. So if that's where they want to label me, I'm more than happy to take the label.
Have you received vetting materials from the Harris campaign?
I'm not speaking on anything personal on this. I think being mentioned is certainly an honor.
So that was Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Now, Governor Walz will have a lot of explaining to do should he be chosen. He was the mayor back, or sorry, not the mayor. He was the governor back during some of the unrest we saw a number of years ago. And so he'll have to answer for some of the rioting we saw in Minnesota a number of years ago. Hard to believe that was 4 years ago now. So let's kind of break this down. Well, let's take out let's look at two more candidates and some of their recent comments, and then let's kind of break down the four big names we're hearing. And you can become a part of the discussion as well. Let us know in the comments. I'll read some off on who you think Kamala Harris will select. And let's kind of look at this as an exercise from a strictly analytical perspective, right? Let's take emotion out of it and our own partisan beliefs. And let's look at it from a strictly political, from an analytical sense, right? Who do you think, if you were to put yourself in the heads of Kamala and her team, who do you think they'll be selecting and why? So here's Senator Mark Kelly. He was asked, this is actually old. This is from late last week. Here's his response when asked about the possibility of him being selected by Kamala Harris as her running mate.
Again, this is not about me. I mean, this is about the future of this country. You know, whether we want to take this country back to 2016 and 2020 when the world was a much more dangerous place when Donald Trump was president of the United States. The damage he did to our alliances we're still recovering.
What do you think?
We do not need to go back to that.
So there's Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. He's an astronaut, fighter pilot. Of course, Arizona, another key state. And he's married to Gabby Giffords, who suffered a terrible attack herself, a shooting incident so many years ago. Now, a fourth name. Now, this name, I'm not sure how real this is, or if this is, they just consider him a good attack dog, somebody good to have out there going after President Trump and Mr. Vance. But Pete Buttigieg, that's how you pronounce it, Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He has been making the rounds all over the TVs, the Sunday shows, cable news, MSNBC, CNN. You're seeing a lot of the mayor and the former mayor, and now Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Pete. Let's hear a little bit from Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
With which she has brought the party together and the energy with which she has not just, as she sometimes says, prosecuted the case against Donald Trump, but also begun to lay out the kind of vision that is going to make Americans better off. It's a phenomenal contrast between President Trump, who is consumed by his own past, and Kamala Harris, who is talking about our future. I also really admired the focus on freedom. That was a really big part of her comments today and yesterday, because I think that's a big part of what is at stake. I'm old enough to remember when freedom was something you usually heard talked about on the Republican side and among conservatives. But right now, I think we have many, many examples why Americans will experience more secure freedom under a Kamala Harris presidency than under a return to the chaos of Donald Trump and the systematic reduction of freedom, starting, of course, with Donald Trump following through on his promise to end a woman's freedom to choose and access abortion rights in this country.
Well, there it is, of course, that last comment by Secretary Pete, who, by the way, look, he's losing his hair. Doesn't it appear he's losing his hair a little bit? But no criticism there. Unfortunately, we can't really control, right, when that starts happening. I'm hoping to keep my hair, but we'll see what happens, right? So Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the last thing he mentioned there, and that's something to watch, is this whole abortion issue. Now, again, abortion itself doesn't even poll as a top 10 concern for Americans when you ask them straight up. However, the Democrat Party will continue to try and make that a top issue because they feel they can fearmonger and win elections based on that issue. Again, it's not, this isn't out of any concern over how do they put it, women's bodies or reproductive rights. No, this is strictly something they want to bring to the forefront in order to benefit politically by scaring young women into voting Democrat. And you heard the secretary there making that comment about abortion, and you'll continue to see that not just from him, but from all of these candidates and potential vice president nominees. And we can't forget, we should also include Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, again, Democrat of a Democrat governor of a red state. There he is, Andy Beshear. That's another name that we're hearing. However, not sure he can carry the state of Kentucky for Kamala Harris. President Trump is beloved in the state of Kentucky. However, the fact that he has done so well in a red state like Kentucky may mean that his message is one that could play well with independents, especially independents in the key states that this election will come to. So first off, let's talk about the election, right? This election is going to come down to 5 or 6 states. So it's not that national polling and that doesn't matter. It always matters, right, to measure the mood of the country as a whole. But what you really want to watch are those polls in the following states, right? Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Let's put North Carolina on that list. And if we were to go a little bit further, we could start looking at Nevada, I believe it is. Maybe New Hampshire. And then you start looking at states like New Mexico. But really, those first 6 states, let's really hone in on those: Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Those are the states that are going to determine this election, and those are the states you will want to watch the polling in. That's why someone like Senator Kelly, right? Arizona, key state. That's why he's got a chance at this. Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania, a key state, maybe the keyest of key states, right? The Keystone State. Josh Shapiro, he's on the list. An important state. He's somebody who had quite the number of crossover votes. Again, people that voted and supported Trump, who also came out and supported Josh Shapiro. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of voters. And then Tim Walz, right? So Minnesota is expected to go Democrat. However, President Trump has mentioned repeatedly, and he just did the rally in St. Cloud, that he sees it as in play. It definitely was in play in 2016. The president considered making a final stop there. I think he chose Michigan at the end. But Minnesota, an interesting state. You got a strong conservative values, right? You could argue, and I say this as somebody who's from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I grew up in Houghton, up on Lake Superior, 9.5 hours north of Detroit. If you were to drive, about 7 hours, I'd say, from the Twin Cities. So I know Minnesota. I spent plenty of time in Duluth, Michigan Tech Huskies, D2 hockey school. Oh, sorry, D1 hockey school, D2 everything else. But we played big time college hockey. We played the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers. My dad being a big Detroit Tigers fan, right? We'd go over to the Metrodome and catch a couple Tigers games every year. So I spent a lot of time in Minneapolis, the Mall of America. I still think it claims and has that title of the largest indoor shopping center. Is it in North America? So Minnesota, I know the state. It's got strong conservative values, but of course the Twin Cities themselves, home to a large Democrat base of voters. You got the universities, and you have some of those standard Democrat party machine politics at play in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and what is known as the Twin Cities. So Minnesota, interesting state. Tim Walz as a governor, right? He's considered from the left the most progressive and successful governors, specifically on workers' rights. He has won over some big wins for Amazon workers, right? So there's a huge voting base right there. This is someone who can talk about what he's done for Amazon workers. He's introduced and passed legislation. Well, he's signed legislation that benefits Uber and Lyft drivers, right? Again, two large built-in constituencies. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who make up, who are part of these communities, right? Whether it's the Amazon workforce, Uber, Lyft, the ride-sharing services. And if they're able to successfully paint Tim Walz as a champion of these people and point to real legislative results, that's got to be something that Kamala and her team are looking at, especially at a time when President Trump and the Republican Party can kind of take ownership of some, some strong support among workers. So back to Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania. So why is he getting so much attention? Well, again, he is somebody who won a state that President Trump carried in 2016. Joe Biden carried it in 20. And Shapiro was able to win by a wide margin in his race for governor. And he was able to do that with a coalition of supporters that come from not just the rural parts of not just the usual Democrat building blocks, right, that you rely on to win elections, but he was able to win over large swaths of rural voters and also some of your traditional Republican voters in the collar counties outside Philadelphia. A lot of these folks voted for Romney but didn't vote for Trump. Well, those voters went with Josh Shapiro. And some voters who may be turned off by the anti-Trump rhetoric, but not entirely turned off by the Democrat Party, they looked at Josh and saw someone they could vote for because he wasn't as vocal with the anti-Trump rhetoric, or kind of the more extreme side of the left, right, where they call Trump a threat to democracy. So actually for Josh Shapiro, it's a calculation he's got to make, because if he signs up for this, he's immediately signing up for a whole new messaging strategy than he's used to, right? His whole deal with winning in Pennsylvania was to win on what he would tell you are the kitchen table issues and not so much the anti-Trump rhetoric, where Kamala Harris and the Democrat Party at the national level, they're really going to be ratcheting up this anti-Trump rhetoric, right? And you see it not just in their rhetoric, but in what they're doing with the ridiculous weaponization of our justice system against President Trump. He's got to be willing to defend all of that. And of course, all of the crazy comments that will be coming out of Kamala's camp on President Trump somehow being a threat to democracy, when it is actually the Democrat Party who totally threw out the will of their rank and file voters by waiting until it was too late to choose a new nominee, to remove Joe Biden, and then to install Kamala Harris. So Josh Shapiro, the question here isn't just on, obviously Kamala Harris has to make the decision on who the right running mate is for her, but these running mates also have to make the decision on what's right for them. And when you're someone like Josh Shapiro, you see yourself as having a bright future in the party. This isn't necessarily the end all be all. This isn't your only opportunity at getting to where you want to be. And obviously for someone like that, you'd assume, I don't want to assume anything here, but I'm willing to wager that he has hopes to be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue himself someday. Again, with Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, another name you heard early on, but seems to have taken her name out, or the Kamala camp has removed her from consideration. people like for people like for people like Gretchen Whitmer or Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, look, they've got what they consider bright futures on their own, and so do they want to tie themselves to this current situation with a candidate like Trump, who, when it comes to both Pennsylvania and Michigan, right? We look at Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. A Republican like Donald Trump does exceedingly well in those states. If you're going to be Republican, you are going to want to run in that Trump lane, right? You could go back to Reagan, right? The Reagan lane. Those are the type of that's the Republican brand that wins in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania. And so does Whitmer and Shapiro. They're not, do they want to come out and basically offend what they may right now consider portions of their of voters that they have a opportunity to pick up and that they have maybe picked up in the past, right? Those crossover voters that Shapiro was able to get. For example, does he want to come out and basically end any chance of having support from these type of voters in 2028 and beyond? So it'll be interesting, right? So for someone like Shapiro, it's maybe not as easy of a yes decision as maybe someone like Roy Cooper, North Carolina. He took his name out of the running, a New York Times report tonight. Now that could also mean that Kamala Harris took him out of the running, and so he's just confirming that. Someone like Roy Cooper, does he have a future at the national level beyond governor, maybe Senate someday? But him, as someone who may be on the back nine of his political career, Kamala Harris wants him to be the running mate. He's probably going to say yes. Or let's say some of these other names you're hearing, right? Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky. By all accounts, he's very popular in state, right, to win statewide in Kentucky as a Democrat. But how many opportunities is he going to have to set himself on the national stage, right, in a future run for the presidency? So something like this could be big for him to get on the ticket for president. But again, with Beshear, similar situation that you have with Shapiro, and maybe to a lesser extent, because Whitmer's kind of staked her spot against Trump. But with Shapiro and Beshear, do they really want to come out and join this, the left wing of the Democrat Party and all this kind of what some would consider silly anti-Trump rhetoric, right? Where they call him a threat to democracy, or he's going to be a dictator and that sort of stuff. So something to think about. Let's come back. I'm going to read some comments. Let's go over some comments, and I want to bring you into tonight's program. Of course, the mayor's live from London. It's now approaching 3 a.m. I don't know, they 5 or 6 hours. So it's about to be 2 or 3 a.m. over there across the pond. So you're stuck with me here for just another few moments. So we're going to go to commercial, come back and talk more about the Sweepstakes on the Democrat Party side.
Delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now.
Welcome back to America's Mayor Live. We're kind of having a discussion tonight as Kamala Harris considers her selection for her vice presidential nominee for the Democrat Party. Roy Cooper, this according to the New York Times. Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, who has been seen as a leading contender to become vice president Kamala Harris's running mate, has informed her team that he has withdrawn from the vice presidential sweepstakes. Mr. Cooper, who previously served as chairman of the Democrat Governors Association, was believed to be among the half dozen top candidates to join Ms. Harris on the Democrat ticket. It was not immediately clear why he had taken himself out of consideration. Now, again, hearing that from Mr. Cooper, that does not mean that could have originated with Kamala, right? Kamala could have been the one to say, sorry, not going to be you, Roy. And, but then allowed him to make the announcement that he was withdrawing, right? So look, this is kind of how politics works. This is how the sausage is made. If you're smart, if Kamala's smart, first of all, you put out a number of names, right? First off, you start out with a long list. Well, she's on a tighter timeline. In a normal cycle, you put out a ton of names, right? Because look, it doesn't hurt to get all these folks kind of saying nice things about you, right? And becoming your biggest cheerleader, right? If you're on a short list to be someone's running mate, you're going to start really, really getting behind that person and everything you do. So you start with a big list, you get all these people on board. And as you then you strategically leak this list that's getting smaller. And at some point, though, when the list is at a number where, 6 to 8, if you've got your person, you let these other folks know ahead of time that it's not going to be them, but you give them options, right? So for Governor Cooper, he may have been given the option, hey, you want to come out and just pull your name, pull yourself out of consideration. That way it doesn't look like we rejected you, right? So that could be something that we see. Look, if it's someone who's really being considered down to the final moments, they may not be in a great mood when they're notified that they won't be the selection, and so they may not play along as well. But the Democrat Party, and boy, have we seen this ever since, really ever since the debate, right? And even before the debate, if you're really thinking, clearly that was a setup, and they gave themselves time to pull Joe Biden if he performed so poorly. That's exactly what happened. And so they pulled Joe Biden. But it's amazing to see the Democrat Party machine at work, and how quickly they coalesced around Kamala Harris, who up until 3 weeks ago, right, was considered, was the reason why Joe Biden wasn't dropping out, right? She was considered his greatest insurance policy up until 3 weeks ago. And that, by the way, that was in the media as well. But as soon as the debate happened, they decided, we can't hide it anymore. President Joe Biden's clear mental shortcomings are on display for all the world to see. And so we can't hide it anymore. The cat's out of the bag, so we got to pull them. So the media turns on them. And a Democrat in today's environment, it's tough for them to win without the media behind them, right? It's the Republicans, and these are Republicans running for office across the board, whether it's President Trump, but Mitt Romney had to deal with it too. Obviously, I'd say going back to at least since Nixon, right? Probably JFK, Nixon, 1960. At least since the 1960s, right? Republicans have the media, for whatever reason. It's a whole nother discussion. There are reasons for it, and we could break it down in another episode. But the liberal media bias, it's something that Republican communicators, staffers, campaigns have to deal with. It's that a built-in advantage for the Democrats. So Joe Biden got a nice taste of how Republicans are constantly treated by so many in the press. And it was interesting to see Biden and his team flip out over that, right? His staffers could not handle it. They were complaining about only getting, 7 minutes to respond to a story from the New York Times. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, 7 minutes. That's nice. New York Times. That's how nice of the Times to give you 7 minutes to respond, right? And to be fair, I've worked with a number of folks at the New York Times. Some of them are very, they at least work with me, so I don't want to be unfair. I've had positive interactions with members of the New York Times, but at large, right, the legacy media, and they came out hard against Biden, and we knew then this is it for him. And we also knew what would take him down was the fact that elected officials, members of Congress, they're all running for re-election. They had to go home to their districts. And look, the public saw what they saw with Joe Biden. So it was impossible to continue to hide and cover up and lie about this. So constituents were talking to their members. So that's why you saw these members coming out against Joe, with the media against him. He had to go. Joe had to go, and he went via PDF on a tweet, which was interesting, right? So, but how quickly the party coalesced around Kamala Harris. And here we are now with Kamala Harris. And wow, in just a short few weeks, I mean, check back 3 or 4 weeks ago, right? We had episodes about the Republican Sweepstakes, and now here we are talking about the Democrat Sweepstakes. So let's take a look at some comments. Let's get you guys involved in the chat. Comment below. What do you think? Who do you think Kamala Harris will select as her running mate, and why? Again, what we're hearing, we have Governor Josh Shapiro, who I believe is the front runner, obviously coming from Pennsylvania, just being a key state for Kamala Harris to win, and his crossover appeal. I would not be surprised if she went with Josh Shapiro. And another reason, of course, being Jewish, some on the Democrat side are saying how, oh my goodness, we don't want to have him on the ticket with what's going on with Gaza and where some of the left wing of the party is today. However, don't discount the idea that someone like Shapiro could shore up that traditional Democrat Jewish support, which again exists in states like Michigan. So you keep hearing about this Dearborn vote in Michigan. Yes, it exists. But remember, Michigan is also a state. So you get this protest vote against Joe Biden. Sure. Some of it can be attributed to what we're seeing in Gaza. I'm telling you this as somebody from Michigan. But some of it is also just your traditional left-wing liberal Michigan voting block. So some of these people who voted against Biden, they didn't do it because of Gaza as much as they did it because Michigan has this left-wing block of voters. Remember, Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton in the 2016 Democrat primary. So I do think it's overblown, and it actually gives Joe Biden and the Democrat Party elites too much credit and too much of an out on this issue, right? The idea that they're actually placating to this American voting bloc in the state of Michigan that supports Gaza and does not support Israel. It's not that group doesn't exist, but it's not as large as, and it's not as consequential as many people are making it. And that also excuses some of the absolutely atrocious policy decisions by the Obama administration, by the Biden administration when it comes to Iran and when it comes to Mideast policy. By saying, and I know now we're getting off on a tangent, let's wrap this up, but by saying the Biden administration and the future Harris administration is only listening to American voters in states like Michigan that are calling for a different course of action in places like Israel and in Gaza, that they're simply responding to the will of the American people. That's misguided. And it's not actually the case. And so we need to get real answers on why the Obama administration literally sent pallets of cash over to Iran. But let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to the election. So picking someone like Shapiro could be strategic in actually shoring up what one would think is eroding support among the American Jewish community, which has traditionally voted Democrat. So it'll be interesting. And of course, coming from Pennsylvania, that just makes it just all the other reason to choose someone like Shapiro. Back to Senator Mark Kelly. He's kind of seen as a moderate. We'll have to take a look at his voting record to see whether or not he really is. But his background as a fighter pilot, an astronaut, and of course, the horrific situation involving his wife and the gun violence issue, which is something the Democrats will be playing up because, again, it's part of how they win elections through fear mongering, right? So they will fearmonger till the cows come home on gun violence, right? And of course on abortion and some of these issues. So they would see Senator Kelly as someone who can, and of course, and look, I'm not taking away from the truth, right? He can speak to the horrors of gun violence in this country, considering what occurred so many years ago to his wife, the former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. So that's kind of where we're at with Kamala Harris. She says she's going to make her choice by August 7th. All of these candidates come with their pros and cons. Bashir, of course, being from a small state like Kentucky, you have to ask the question, in real terms, where does he pick up votes that we don't already have, right? On the plus side, look, he's a Democrat who played so well in Kentucky. This guy he's onto something when it comes to independence, and he can win hearts and minds. Tim Walz, Minnesota. Again, all these built-in constituencies with working Americans. That's how at least Democrats might see him, as someone who can point to legislation that, and we'll see over time how much this really does help working people in America. But he will paint himself as a champion of the working people and somebody who has championed Amazon workers with legislation, and of course Uber and Lyft drivers. So he can point to these to some real work he's done in Minnesota, and these are big constituencies, right? The Amazon workforce in this country is massive. Of course, the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Americans who drive Uber and Lyft or know somebody, right, who drives for these ride share services. And then, of course, you have the people who align themselves with working people. And so that's those are big voting blocks. Tim Walz, somebody who can kind of come in with support there. On the flip side, he'd have to answer for some of his more liberal positions, right, when it comes to the environment. And also he'll have to answer for what some see as massive weakness when it came to the riots back in 2020 in Minnesota specifically. Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania, we talked extensively about him. He's somebody who we, of course, could see with massive appeal with independence. He'll have to answer for, well, specifically, he's got a situation involving a close ally in Harrisburg, who's been credibly accused, or I don't want to say credibly, who's been accused of sexual misconduct. You'll want to read into that. I don't want to name names at this time, but there is, and it's been well documented in Harrisburg, in the local press, a close ally of Josh Shapiro has had some problems. And so you'll want to look into that, and we'll see how much that can be tied back to Josh Shapiro. Mark Kelly, we talked about the pros and cons of him. It appears that Governor Cooper of North Carolina has pulled himself out. Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan also no longer being considered. And then Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of the Department of Transportation. Look, if he runs, he's ran for national office. He's well known. He plays well to your traditional Democrat voter. Downside, he'll have to answer for a lot of transportation issues, right? And whether or not they're all his fault, he took on that role. So whether it's Boeing, the train derailment over East Palestine, and some ongoing infrastructure issues, power outages, he will have a lot of explaining to do, as they say, should he be selected. I see that more of a, they keep him in the runnings, and he's a good attack dog. They see him as somebody that can go on TV and attack Vance and attack the 45th and 47th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. So join in on the conversation. Let us know your thoughts. We'll be back tomorrow night. The mayor, again, joining us live from London. He'll have a lot more, and I'm excited to talk with him. I'm hopeful we'll be able to talk to him tomorrow more on his thoughts on this, on the Sweepstakes on the Democrat side. So sorry you didn't have the mayor. You're stuck with me tonight, but we will have him all week live from London and all across Europe. Stay tuned. You never know just where we might see him tomorrow. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for joining in on the discussion. I'll be reading the comments, and we will continue to follow closely as Kamala Harris closes in on her running mate for president.
Bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply